The Electric State is the latest Netflix film to hit the streaming service. This one is from the Russo Brothers. It reunites them with not only the screenwriters Marcus and McFeely, who wrote all of their Marvel outputtings, as well as The Gray Man, which they made previously on Netflix, but also reunites them with composer Alan Silvestri for a big sci-fi epic action-adventure film. If this doesn't hit those Avengers vibes, then I don't know what will. This movie's based off of a graphic novel by Simon Stålenhag of the same name. It takes place in an alternate 1990s where animatronics have become on the rise and the AI brains within them have grown a lot more sentient. They want basic rights. There's a big war between the humans and the robots where the robots lost. They've been pushed aside, put on the other side of the Trump wall in their own little community while humans live on their own, embracing a different kind of technology. One day, though, a teenager played by Millie Bobby Brown, named Michelle, is reunited with her brother, it seems. Her brother died in a car crash, but there is this robot that seems to be implying that the consciousness operating it is her brother. He's out there somewhere. She needs to go find him. Along her journey, she meets up with Chris Pratt, bit of a, Han Solo smuggler wannabe 90s bro type, who's willing to help her out after some shenanigans at his place, and they go on this big adventure while Ethan Skate, played by Stanley Tucci, is doing some stock villain stuff. Speaking of stock villains, Giancarlo Esposito is somewhere as well. The Russo brothers are interesting to me. We don't need to spend all day talking about how some of their Marvel outputtings are some of the best in the MCU. I think that is completely true. But ever since then, I was completely excited to see what they could do after Endgame. It's like, okay, they've been shackled, to the MCU for so long, but now they can really spread their wings. Let's see what they've got, because they've shown some real clear talent behind the camera. And Marcus and McFeely have shown a lot of great talent with their screenwriting, right? So let's see what all of these creatives can do outside of the MCU now with regular films. And the Russo, they've also produced a lot as well through Agbo, and sometimes you'll get something like Relic with their name attached to it, or Everything Everywhere All at Once, Best Picture winner, by the way. But then you'll get something like 21 Bridges, a bit more generic, like, okay, cop action movie. Extraction, I wasn't too big on that. Some people are. Extraction 2 is a little bit better if you ask me. Or they'll do something like All Fun and Games, a really fucking horrendous horror film. So Agbo, as far as them as producers, a bit of a mixed bag. As far as their directorial outputs, also not great. You have Cherry, which at the very least, it didn't work for me, but it did seem like, okay, they're trying to depart from what they normally do. It's interesting to see them attempt that and to see them do something different with Tom Holland. And then they followed that up with The Gray Man, which is one of the most boring, generic, like, spy action films I think I've seen, just in general. Just, it has all of the money of, like, a big blockbuster movie. It has the cast, but it's one where the writing, it just feels so generic. And as far as directorial flourishes, it just does not have anything that people thought was special about their outputs with the bigger budgeted Avengers movies. But The Electric State, that's them going back to like a more sci-fi thing, you know what I mean? It's another action movie, but you're incorporating sci-fi stuff. You got the screenwriters back, even though they wrote The Gray Man, but we got them back, but Alan Silvestri's coming into it, and you got this all-star cast. You got Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Giancarlo Esposito as mentioned, Stanley Tucci as mentioned, Brian Cox, Woody Harrelson, a lot of people doing voices, so Ke Huy Quan, who just won Best Supporting Actor. It just seemed like maybe this could be something that's a little bit more up their alley. You then get into a bit of a snag when a lot of people who are fans of the graphic novel of The Electric State realize, hey, the marketing here makes it look a lot more fun and commercial, whereas the graphic novel is not. It's a bit more haunting, a little more atmospheric. It kind of warns against our reliance on consumerism, our willingness to just let this unchecked growth of technology consume us, what that does to us, you know what I mean? And now it just seems like they're kind of making a movie that could be in clear opposition of that. I have not read the graphic novel. This is just what I have heard from a lot of other people, but I don't necessarily have those worries going into it. If they did make something that is more commercial and more like populist entertainment, sorry Simon Stålenhag, but if it's just an entertaining movie, that's all I want to see at this point, I knew I was in trouble when the first couple minutes of this movie, we open with our establishing of the characters, Millie Bobby Brown and her brother, who's about to be dead, or is he? And it's edited weird. It's staged weird. The cinematography is flat. The color grading is just that slab of gray. You know what I mean? It's the weirdest introduction to like our lead character. One of the weirdest I think I've seen in a big budget movie in a while. You know what I mean? And then you get like a really rush through like news montage kind of thing, explaining what happened in the war, briefly going over the alternate history stuff. You know, a lot of things that I thought would be more interesting to explore, just completely brushed to the side. Like Walt Disney, you know, made advancements in the development of these animatronics. Okay, move on. We got to introduce Stanley Tucci. All right, let's move on. We got to keep going. Show Chris Pratt in a quick little scene. He was in the army fighting this war. Okay, move on. You know, like as far as like the growth of the AI, you know, how they become more sentient, how they've, you know, become more evolved, and the, you know, the destruction of the war, you know what I mean? Like, it's just breezing right by, you know, and it's like, man, this is what I wanted to see more of, you know, I would like to sit in this a lot more, and you're just not giving it to me, and this is right after an opening scene with Millie Billy, which is really awful. Oh no, we pick right back up with her after the title card drops, and, you know, it's been a couple years, she's an orphan now because of an accident that is completely unrelated to the robot war, which I found, okay, if I can go on another quick tangent, you know, it feels like they missed a step, right? Like, they explain, like, oh, she's an orphan and her brother died because of like a car accident with like a deer in front of them or something like that. You know, she just wakes up in a hospital. And I was like, man, wouldn't a better opening scene be like they're like just living their normal days or something, and then, you know, action happens around them, a robot battle is happening, and then her family dies because of the, you know, of the war, you know, between humans and robots. You know, like, wouldn't that have been better to just tie it all together? And then that is like why she doesn't want to put on her VR headset, you know, later in a classroom when she goes to class, because she's a teenager. Millie Billy is still a teenager, you know, because of her hesitance to like technology. The opening scene that they have given here does not, you know, paint a picture of that at all. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they make the connection? Like, maybe the thing that kills her brother, which spoilers, turns out to be a cover-up. Why isn't that just part of the war bit? You know, like, God, we were wasting so much time, so much precious money, resources, and they shot the worst fucking introduction scene. Oh my God, and they glossed over everything that was like interesting about like the war. That's when I think I knew, like, yeah, this movie's not gonna work out. There's like a couple shots where, like from the pages of the book that I have seen floating online, there's like a couple shots, mostly near like the third act climax, where it kind of captures like the same sky, like the same color of the sky, but the movie is not like that haunting, like self-reflective thing. It is much more like a populist movie, but it is so derivative of like everything that has come before. And, you know, the thing about movies having other elements from other movies, it completely just depends on your execution of it. Like, if you can do something interesting with it, or if the story is working, then I'm not going to notice it all that much. This movie just has so many things pulled from other movies with just no style, no grace. And like I said, because of the just kind of rush nature into getting the story going, you know, it's like, it's not like I have time to see like if there's any differences between, you know, what's being put in here and what was, you know, clearly borrowed from something else. It's just like, well, you know this from another thing, let's keep going. Like, they put on these VR headsets and go into not necessarily like a different world, but they like start controlling these like other like robot beings. It reminded me immediately, like, oh, this is Ready Player One. Not exactly Ready Player One, but it's got some key elements. The rest of the world building also, before she gets started on this adventure, when this little robot shows up, you know, it's like she's with Jason Alexander, her foster dad, and then she goes to school, she comes back home, and then that's it. Like, that's all the world building you really get. Everything else is like Stanley Tucci in one of his offices going, I need to find this girl, and that's the rest of the world building, you know what I mean? I was like kind of completely confused about like, so what kind of world are we living in? Like, it's not necessarily post-apocalyptic because there's like society, but it certainly seems like they're trying to paint a picture of like a like lawlessness in certain parts. Like, what's the specificities? You know what I mean? Like, I want to see this stuff. Like, this is what's going to make it interesting. This is what's going to make people want to keep coming back and want to see more. Instead, it's just like a bunch of stuff that's just been pulled elsewhere. Like Ready Player One. I was thinking of Rogue One during the third act climax. It felt a lot like that. I was thinking of Chappie just because of the robot design, like the human controlled robot designs in certain parts. I was also thinking of the The Creator, which came out like a year and a half ago. Pretty solid movie that more people should see. I'm not going to act like that was like the most amazing movie I've ever seen, but it is very impressive that they made that movie for $80 million, and it looks as fantastic as it does, and it, you know, does grapple with some themes, like some story themes about like what it means to be human, you know, this growth of AI technology, you know, like what's the fine line there, you know, it's a lot more interesting, and they've, you know, approached the material in a more like sophisticated, more thoughtful manner. This movie doesn't, and it also costs $320 million. Here's the thing, it does look good, like the visual effects do look pretty fantastic. As good as The Creator, if we're gonna compare directly, I would say no. I was more visually fascinated, more drawn to the screen from The Creator, and yeah, that cost a lot less. This movie, it's like, yeah, it has good visual effects, but it's also like that thing of like all the robots just look like this thing of like dumpy, run down, like nothing looks interesting, like they all just look very the same. And as far as like, you know, what I want to see more of, as far as like how, you know, this like AI consciousness, you know, growth of animatronics has changed the world, like there's just so many things that confuse me, like, oh, so in this alternate 90s, Mr. Peanut is like the only mascot, like corporate mascot to exist. There's like a giant guy who kind of has the face of Sonic. I don't know if that's supposed to specifically be Sonic the Hedgehog, but that's what I thought of. Is it just those two? Because everyone else is kind of made up. You have baseball guy Brian Cox, Popfly, doing baseball stuff. Jenny Slate is just like a robot, like a postman kind of thing. There's like a chair that gives you a haircut. You know what I mean? Like a restaurant, you know what I mean? All this other stuff. But they all kind of like, you'll have all these other ones that are kind of like dumpy, run down, but then you'll have like an Anthony Mackie buddy bot to Chris Pratt, who's like a construction guy who has got multiple different bodies to enter, and it's like, why does this one look better, but everyone else kind of looks the same, kind of like dumpy, you know what I mean? Like, I want to see more of the world, explore more of the world, they're not doing it. It cost $320 million. Another fun fact, apparently this was supposed to go to theaters at some point. Andy Muschietti was in the talks to direct this at some point, but the Russos, who were already producing, eventually got persuaded to direct, and then it moved from Universal to Netflix. So maybe Andy Muschietti, look, I'm not going to act like he's got a perfect track record. I did not care for The Flash. I thought It Chapter 2 was a letdown, but Andy Muschietti, at the very least, I think would have looked at the graphic novel and been like, yeah, I can hone in on this tone. You know what I mean? Like, I can do something with this. I made Mama, for Christ's sake, right? And I do not think ever in a million years that the Russos would have been the right people to do this, especially with just how casually they kind of talk about, like, AI integration in filmmaking, how they're gonna, you know, disrupt the film industry and shit like that. It's like, look, like, and some of the things they even mentioned, like they mentioned recently, like, we used AI to change people's voices for the Electric State, and it's like, that just kind of sounds like voice modulation that's been around for a while. Like, I just call that like editing, sound design, whatever, you know, like the guy, like the thing I always think about is like, it's not necessarily AI, it's like the guy Matthew Wood who voices General Grievous. He doesn't sound like that. Like, I've seen the clips, he does a voice and then they take that voice and add the General Grievous filter to it. So it's like, I don't think necessarily, like, you don't have to use the phrasing of AI for everything. Some of it is basic, just film editing stuff, but they just talk about it, the Russos talk about it so casually, and so like, people are scared, they don't know what it can do, but it can be really helpful. It's just going to be a mainstay. Imagine you're just feeling a little down in the dumps and you go home and you're like, imagine me a movie where I'm the lead and Marilyn Monroe's my girlfriend in it or something. Yeah, that'd be really fucking cool. And it's like, God, ghouls. Fucking ghouls. Like, the Russo brothers, I don't want to act like they're totally incompetent. As we mentioned, you know, there's a lot of great visual effects shots, but even some of the action sequences, they are fun when they get going, you know what I mean? I just, you know what I mean? Just, this movie is just too generic. You know, it's too generic and stock in every single capacity to say that they're like these visionaries that we should continue respecting for the long term. Like Chris Pratt, this is another role where they have cast him to just kind of be Chris Pratt. If there's anything else interesting to this character, I missed it, because it is not, you know, a highlight. It's nothing that stands out. He's friends with this little robot dude, voiced by Anthony Mackie, but when they try to squeeze some emotion out of that later, doesn't hit, mostly because their connection is kind of built on, they just kind of make insulting jokes at each other, which can be funny. I can't say any of this movie was funny, though. Like, every single joke to me kind of fell flat. We mentioned Brian Cox plays this baseball animatronic, Popfly, recites "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," does some other, like, I'm an old man, but I do sports kind of talk stuff. not funny. Jenny Slate, a funny actress, but just not funny in this. A lot of Anthony Mackie as well. Like, he's almost unrecognizable. Obviously, they've said it's probably because of the modulation stuff. Almost unrecognizable, which would have been impressive enough, but then, he's got all these jokes to tell. He's always wisecracking, and it's like, God, that's not working. That's not working for me at all. There's a joke where they're surrounded by some evil animatronics at one point when they're trying to meet Ke Huy Quan. Once again, and like, he won Best Supporting Actor. Just wanted to mention that. He is a genuinely fantastic actor, and unfortunately, his talents are wasted in this. It's another one of those where they've assembled an all-star cast of favors. Do they need to be in this movie? Not necessarily, but does it make our cast list look more impressive? Maybe more of a draw for people just scrolling by? Maybe. It's like If, a movie that's like pretty generic and not very good, but hey, fucking George Clooney's in it voicing just an astronaut for 3 lines. Or Bradley Cooper's A Cup of Water. Amy Schumer's in it, which would have made people click off anyways. But anyways, going back to my point, they're like surrounded by these evil animatronics, and a song starts playing and the evil animatronics go crazy, and it's a song by, I forget which one, but it's by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, and of course prompts the line from Chris Pratt where he's like, "I'm not gonna die listening to Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch," and it's like, it's supposed to be funny because, he's calling it out exactly what's going on. Like they're undercutting the serious, like we're about to die, but now he's kind of making a joke of it. It's like, it's just not funny. A lot of been there, done that stuff. A moment where Chris Pratt is like yelling at Millie Billy, like, "We are not gonna go traveling with you. Like, my buddy Anthony Mackie in his bigger robot form is not gonna help you out, and that's a promise," or something like that. And then it hard cuts, and they're doing the thing anyway. Like I said, just a lot of stock, just generic ass jokes. Let's talk about like more character stuff, like Stanley Tucci. His villain is like just stock, like, I'm, businessman, serious businessman, I'm gonna, change the world with my technology kind of thing. And look, he's a classy actor, sometimes acting shines through, and Stanley Tucci is a class enough act. The problem I found is that they give him a bit of like a mommy issue sort of backstory, like something kind of like that. And there's like points later on where he's supposed to kind of be losing it. And this one, like, he delivers this one edgelord quote where he's basically like, "The world is a tire fire floating on an ocean of piss." And like all of those things combined, it made me think like, I'm not saying it had to be Elon Musk, but you need an actor to kind of hone in on like this fucking like Elon Musk-X like loser character. I'm not saying necessarily Mark Rylance and like Don't Look Up or something like that, but just someone to tap into like this like big loser energy that this character seems to have a bit more of on the paper. But you've cast Stanley Tucci, and he's fine to watch, like he tries to classy it up, but it's like a complete wrong fit, you know what I mean? That's the thing also, is like so much of this cast seems like they don't have any chemistry with each other. It's like, well, we got the name, they're going in. There's a scene where Tucci is talking with Giancarlo Esposito, and it seems like they're on different emotional wavelengths. Giancarlo Esposito, by the way, man, you gotta pick something else. Look, I know some of these will pay well, you know what I mean? You've gotta pick something that lets you explore some range a bit more, my guy. This is just another stock Giancarlo Esposito villain role, and I could not care less. He's not doing anything interesting with his performance in this. They have Millie Bobby Brown leading the film, as mentioned, and I've been avoiding it because, like, she's obviously gotten a lot of attention with, like, the headlines, paparazzi, invasive questioning, stuff like that. She's, come up from child star with Stranger Things, now she's an adult, and people are fucking weird about that. And I don't want to pick on her too much, because I have liked her in Stranger Things. Enola Holmes, I think those movies are actually, like, pretty fun, and she's, plucky and good in them. In the Godzilla movies she's in, like, she does her job, she's solid. This might be the first time, I didn't see Damsel. This might be the first time, though, where I was watching her and I was like, this isn't very good. This isn't a role that I think is very suited for her. They're trying to sell you with some big drama, and of course it's built on some weak foundation, as, I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But it's just like, yeah, I don't care for the characters, and I don't think this is the best work that you could possibly do. And I don't want to blame any actors in this. It's the Russos. It's the studio. It's Netflix. You know what I mean? We got all these names based off of just, we need the names. We got some of them under contract. We're paying them out pretty big. I think that's part of why it costs $320 million, because you have all these people, but if it's going to streaming, there's no back end deals from like theater success. It's just going straight home. So I think they have to pay more up front, right? That's probably in combination with the visual effects. I bet that's why the $320 million price tag is there. So I don't want to blame any of them. I think it's just, they're in this movie whether they're right for the role or not, and the Russos have kind of directed them in a way that just isn't working. Like, they're not elevating the material. Like we were kind of discussing, it feels like they're not really approaching this source material with the same kind of gravitas that the graphic novel would have had, you know what I mean? The same kind of respect that people have for that story, you know? They're changing it completely, as mentioned. It also, the thing about the Russos is that they have made a film where the messaging seems completely off when we get to the end of the movie. For some parts of it, it seems like they're trying to build up this thing of like, yeah, maybe some of like these advancements in technology, maybe it is a bit of a bad idea, a bit of, you know, opening Pandora's box kind of situation, and we shouldn't do that. I thought that was maybe why they were building up the Millie Bobby Brown doesn't want to put on her school VR headset. You know, she's never put it on before. But then later on in the film, you know, to close it out, you know, she gives a big speech about how she should have been, you know, embracing herself with her community, with the world, and she's been shutting herself off, and we need to be more open to these things. And it's kind of like, okay, so are you, like, it seems like now it's conflicting a bit. Like, it does not seem like the messaging that they had really figured it out. It feels like they came up with like a inspirational-esque speech, and then they didn't fucking think about like, well, does this actually line up with what we've established about the character? And then maybe they thought that, but then they were like, wait, what character? We haven't given her shit. Oh, fuck. Alright, big spoiler time. I don't care about this part, so sorry, I am gonna spoil it a little bit. There's a point where they do find out what Stanley Tucci has been doing with Millie Bobby Brown's brother. He's faked the death accident thing and has, you know, taken him away. And they have essentially, in order to win the war against the robots, they needed, you know, a united, you know, robot kind of army of their own where the humans operate it, whatever. What Stanley Tucci has done is he's created a server for that, and, you know, that powers the rest of his electronics, his technology, stuff like that. And he's built this server that is entirely run on child prodigy Millie Bobby Brown's brother's brain. Don't ask me how that works, that a kid can be so smart and such a child prodigy that they can hook his brain up and it's enough, like, the smart levels are enough to power this entire thing. Like as soon as I was hearing it explained, I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, they're really committed to this? Like, what the fuck am I hearing? You know what I mean? He's such, oh my god, but the opening scene is him, like, acing this fucking test that fucking Einstein took or something like that. Like, oh man, the fucking prodigy levels are off the chart. You wouldn't really get that from the scenes where he's interacting with Millie Billy in the intro scene or the flashbacks that they do, but he's like this fucking, like, genius beyond his year. It's like, he just seems like a regular child. Once again, it goes back to the Russos just not knowing how to approach this material or direct their actors. That's the biggest thing I wanted to mention, because it's like, as far as like the stupid derivative things that are in this movie, the stupid lines that they have their actors say, the stupid wig on Chris Pratt's fucking head, you know, that is the stupidest thing about this movie. And $320 million for that? Really? That's where that's going? This fucking stupid shit? $320 million? You know how many other smaller movies you could have made for that? Jesus, I mean, shit, we have the creator to prove that. Like, yeah, that movie only cost 80 fucking million. I gotta give The Electric State a D+. I just found this movie just, you know, certain parts are, like, competent enough just because the Russos are, like, experienced filmmakers, but they've used their competence in a way that is just really, really generic and really stupid. Alan Silvestri's score kind of conflicts with me because I like hearing his music, but so much of it sounds like stuff that I heard from his Avengers movies, and I'm like, can you do literally anything else? And it doesn't help that Silvestri scored Ready Player One, you know? Oh my god, yeah, just too many bad jokes, too much bad dialogue, some actors cast in roles that aren't right for them, the chemistry's not there, action sequences are, you know, passable when they start up, visual effects look fine. I wanted more of the world, and I didn't get enough of the world. I feel like, yeah, Andy Muschietti probably would have been a better choice. Somebody who just likes the graphic novel, you know, wants to create interesting films instead of movies to be played in the background. And look, here's the thing, I'm not saying, you know, it's a bad thing to put a movie on in the background while you do other things. Those movies, you know, they exist for a reason. Here's the difference, I think, between, like, what Netflix has stated openly, like, yeah, we kind of want to, you know, make some movies where people don't have to pay attention all the way. So, movies that a lot of people have picked to play in the background before started off, maybe, you know, to make some money, maybe that was their goal, like, we want to make some money, but that was the point, like, we're going to put it in the theater to make some money, people are going to rent it, or we're going to create a deal where it's streamed, whatever. This is like a streaming service, like, concocting a film, you know, based off of just algorithm logic, you know, to be ready, you know, just presentable. Like, nobody goes to the theater at first. Like, this one just kind of reeks a bit more to me as, like, cynical, you know, corporate filmmaking, and I do not respect that at all. Anyways, if you saw The Electric State, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.